how to read more, or what I should really say is how to finish more books, because that's really what this is about. We can read all day and all night and everything and really just not feel 100% satisfied, because for me personally, I don't know why, it's the extra satisfaction of actually finishing books. I am a reader that I read about 55 to 65 books a year on average. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a bit less, but that's about it. A lot of them are huge fantasy tomes of 1,000 pages or more. So I like to think it's, even it would be in the hundreds probably, if I didn't read such huge books. So really we should go by page count. In my circles, I'm known as kind of a bit of a slow reader, actually. So, and maybe that's just putting it on myself because I don't think anyone else is putting that on me. But I know people that read 100, 200, even 300 books a year. I mean, we're talking almost a book a day. Some people I know do that. They are fast readers. I am not. I consider myself a slow reader. And so I just figured, with that perspective, and I'm not saying if you read less than me, then you're a really slow reader. You do you, right? So we've got 7 different tips from me, just from what I've learned being a reader for really the last 20 years. The first one, and I consider this the most important one, consistency, really. Consistency it just helps the most. I went to law school, and then after law school, you have to do this daunting thing for all law students, which is if you want to be a lawyer, you have to take the bar in the state where you want to practice, right? So that is a bit of a daunting task. No matter how well you do in law school, there's always that, am I even going to be able to pass the thing that will even let me do the job that I'm trying to do here? Did I just waste 3 years here? You sign up typically for a bar review prep class, and what they do is they give you this stack of books. I mean, it is these huge things filled with dense small writing on pieces of the law, and you have this huge pile it stacks up forever, and you've got 2 months. I learned a lot studying for that. I had to, for me, because again, slow reader, but I was daunted. I was daunted as much as the next guy. But what you do is you take one step at a time and you learn. And this took me a while to learn. But you take it one day at a time, one step at a time, and eventually you do get it. You end up getting it, as long as you put in the work on a daily basis. I remember walking to the place where I was going to study, doing my flashcards on the way there because I was taking advantage of every opportunity. And again, that's kind of what I do for reading, at least at this point. Maybe not at first, but really what I'm getting at is the consistency. So the consistency of doing it will get you to your goal. That helped me, and that made me learn a lot, that you can take huge tasks, make them manageable by hitting one thing at a time. And that's what I did for the bar exam, and that's what I do for a lot of things still, and especially for reading. So how do you stay consistent? There's a lot of ways you can do that. Consistency, I think, for a lot is just 10 pages a day. 10 pages a day on a 1,000-page book. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it'll add up. 100 days and you're done with it, right? So this sucker can be done in a little over 3 months. Now, you might think, and especially if you're one of those friends of mine that reads 300 a year, that's ridiculous, but it isn't. I just know so many people, and this was me as well, that can you get overwhelmed and you start reading a book and then you just never finish it. And I remember taking years, when I was in my, yeah, sure, I read. Really what would have helped me is stay consistent. So consistency, I'm really going for, make use of the time, right? Make use of the time you have and have things available to you, right? I have a book on me at any given time. I'm sure you do too. I'm talking to the crowd, right? But not only a physical book, because I usually have my Kindle app on me, on my phone, and we'll get to distractions in a sec. That's one of those. But consistency is about taking advantage of those times that you have, because one of my favorite things is to read. I just enjoy it so much. And if you have a book on you, you can be reading at the doctor's office when you're waiting. You can be reading in the grocery store line while you're waiting in line. There's so many opportunities to take advantage of. If you have a commute like I kind of do, it's about a 20-minute each way commute, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks. So that's how I get a lot read. Anyway, you can utilize the places that you have. Now, the big thing, number 2 here, is distractions. It's so easy now to be distracted, and that's one of those. By having a Kindle app on your phone, in theory, sounds good, but I do find that having an actual Kindle, the full-blown thing, I didn't bring it for some reason, but a full-blown Kindle is going to be better for you because it's less distracting. There aren't things popping up to, oh, so-and-so just texted. Oh, Apple News is telling me that something happened from Will Smith. And so those things make it really hard to focus. So a big thing I think about reading consistently and getting books finished is to remove those distractions, because I find myself too, is I do have that consistent bedtime routine, going back to number 1, of trying to read every single night, because with my job and everything, I can't get to sleep unless I read. It's become that much of a habit now for me. And so if I have that distraction there, it's so easy to almost wake yourself up more at night, if that's my goal here, but to be distracted so much by your phone, so you can do things like leave it in the other room. Just, for me, honestly, I put it into charge, and then I have this weird thing about if it's charging, I want it to get fully charged before I take it off as much as possible. Not always possible, but so then at least for me, that kind of removes that distraction for me, and I can just sit there and actually read my either Kindle or physical book, right? So remove those distractions, number 2. Number 3, like I said, always have a book on you. That's the thing. Always have that on you. Like I even need to tell you that. But again, it's important to have that, to have the book ready to be able to read, right? And I know my kids, they laugh at me because sometimes it'll be like, you're still reading that? Because again, I go with this consistency thing. If I can even just read a couple pages, you're still doing it. But doing that on a daily basis as opposed to a couple pages every 3 weeks is going to get your goals accomplished in a time that doesn't make you frustrated too. And I think that frustration really comes through. But always have that book on you. That's number 3. Number 4, keep going. I think you need to expand your definition of what reading is. What is reading? Is it really only taking a look at something with your eyeballs? Is that reading? Man, I just spoiled so many things for myself. Or do you have other senses? Can they be utilized to read as well? I honestly don't think that reading only means with your eyeballs. I think it can be with many things, including your earballs or ears, whatever they're called. So graphic novels also count. They count for reading. Maybe you want to up your stats, read a graphic novel. They're usually much quicker. There's a lot less reading, honestly. But they count. They're books. They're novels. They count, okay? If you needed someone to say that, I'm saying it. Graphic novels count. Audiobooks count. They absolutely count. I have an inner monologue in my head going when I read, which is I think why I read so slowly anyway. So whether it's myself reading to myself or someone else reading to myself, it's still reading. And so reading is consuming knowledge and stories. Whatever sense you use to do that, we have a lot of senses, and I don't think that we can limit reading to just one of those. My 2 cents there. All right. Now, this is going to be one I'm not sure. Anyway, I honestly think this is the way to go, but because I am a mood reader, this is kind of my mood reading point and a part of the list. All right. Number 5, you can read multiple books at once. Now, this, we're going to get to the next step. The next number is also going to deal with this a little bit, but it can be a little overwhelming, right? If you have multiple books going on, I've been there, where then you almost are like, oh, I'm so torn, and you're going so slowly through each one because you're taking time to read something else, that it can be, this can backfire. So I am fully aware that this is not going to be a step for everyone. Here's my position, or my argument for it. My argument for it is, I don't know about you, but I can watch multiple different television shows at once. Sometimes I'm in the mood for a fantasy type show. Wheel of Time, Lord of the Rings, all kinds of things you can read. Well, Lord of the Rings is coming up. Like Game of Thrones, you name it, I want a fantasy. No, now I want a mystery. I want some Jack Reacher, mystery detective type solving things with muscles. No, wait, today I would like a comedy. I need to watch The Office, Community. I've had, at one time, especially back in the day when things weren't just binge watched, but back in my time, I used to watch multiple shows at once. So I have been known to have multiple shows because they would come out once per week, and I could keep track of multiple storylines at once. Just like that, just like in TV, I am not only sometimes in the mood for a science fiction novel or a fantasy book. Those are mostly what I'm in the mood for, but maybe a superhero or anything, you name it, zombies, or typically fiction in those realms. Sometimes it is, I love economics and psychology books. It just depends, right? And why would you be, especially as a mood reader myself, why would you constrain yourself to just one of those? And so I honestly believe if you're not feeling it in that moment, maybe it's just because in that moment you felt like laser swords and blasty blasters. I don't know. And instead of medieval swords and anyway, they're kind of similar, but instead of, some intellectual theorizing on why the economy is crumbling around you. So those things are how I kind of see it, is, especially as a mood reader, is maybe even you need a mood reading break from what you're currently even reading. It's doable. Again, when you're talking, because I feel like a lot of people I talk to are readers that can read a book we're talking a couple sittings, in in a week. But I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, that the majority, probably the vast majority, if we're really looking at those statistics that are just dismal about people hardly ever picking up a book after college and high school, but for the most part, most people are reading much more slowly and getting through books much more slowly. And that's why I go, why not, if you are a mood reader, start another one. It doesn't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything. And maybe enrich your reading time. Again, your mileage may vary on that one, because getting into number 6, it can overwhelm you. And my biggest thing here now is, don't get overwhelmed, okay? Don't let yourself get overwhelmed. It's okay. It's okay to slowly read. That's fine. There's no race for this. Goodreads tracks it, but that isn't, it's for your own benefit. It's so you can see what's going on and see what you've been reading here. And I just really think that consistency can help with that overwhelmingness. And so you kind of finally, eventually, and that's why I do love my paperbacks and my hardcover books, my physical books, because you can really physically, psychologically see the progress. And you eventually go, oh my gosh, I'm halfway through. And sometimes even just that alone helps you read more and want to read more. Obviously, the books themselves can be a big factor in this. So this is getting to my final point, number 7, DNF. Don't forget, you don't have to read everything. You are not required to. DNF it. Do not finish. Did not finish. I do it all the time. It's been life-changing, not committing myself to books that I was struggling reading. You don't have to read them all. First of all, firmly believe, even if you're reading 300 a year, which again, hats off to you, you're still going to be able to find enough books in your whole lifetime. I mean, if you do the math on this, it's insane. So don't do the math. It's very depressing. But doing the math as I have, you will see that even reading 300 books a year, which is not everyone, and I would argue it's maybe a 0.1% of the population, you're still not going to read all the great books out there. And so, which means that there's also going to be a lot of meh books and maybe a lot of bad books that hopefully you're not reading. But I still firmly believe, even reading a ton of books, there are so many books published in any given moment, especially now with the independent publishing, just that it's taken off. And there's so many good independently published books that there is just so much out there. I love Fantasy Literature has a saying on their site, life's too short to read bad books. It is. If it's not jiving with you, I firmly believe people are all readers at heart. And if they say they're not, they just haven't found that book. And it's hard. It takes some time to find that beautiful book that will make you love it and love reading. But I firmly believe that if you're not loving it, there is no reason to keep going. You can move on, find a book that you will love and that you are enjoying and will enjoy. That, I think, is a lot of reasons why people get stalled. Example for me, I was reading The Brothers Karamazov. I love Dostoevsky now. At the time, this was my first, and it's huge. It's like this. It's like this thick. I remember it looking like this. This is Gormenghast though. But I remember it looking like that, and just trying to read through it, finding great quotes even in it. I remember highlighting some and just like, oh man, I already in the first like 50 pages, I'm finding some great just gems out of this book. But I just would stall so much. I just could not keep going, and I was pushing myself to read it and pushing, and and this was in my like I'm getting back into reading phase, and I just I was jiving with my fantasy books and stuff, and this was like, I gotta read this is a classic, and I just couldn't keep going. It was like nothing could convince me, even to stay consistent. It was just not possible. And so I can just firmly say, so I put it away finally. I mean, literally, we're talking after like 6 months of just trying and not getting anywhere, and finally making it. I think I just gave up at around 100 pages because it was just like, this clearly is going to take me 10 years to read at this rate. And again, maybe that's a doable thing if, again, keeping that consistency up. If you keep doing that while reading other things, that'd be doable. But anyway, my point is, I had to give it up. That was the way to go. I've since become much more of a reader and much more understand myself and how I read and my habits. I've since been able to read it, and I love it. It's one of my favorite books. But at the time, again, and that's maybe also with the DNF, is just maybe just the timing's not right. I've done that for Stephen King novels as well. Timing wasn't right. Loved them later on. So this is been a long rambly video, but I cannot thank you enough for stopping by. I hope that you jived with some of this, that it made sense. Anyway, let me know what I got wrong, all that. This has been Shelf Centered. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please leave a like and subscribe if this is the kind of thing that you're into. If you like this kind of a video and talking mostly about fantasy and science fiction books and your occasional zombie book. Thank you, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.